It that sounds like a fun project, which is in line with the name itself. I wonder if we can make it even more funner. One more time.
And that would be ContentJoy. That could be ContentJoy because you could make any content a joy to read and or consume, right? All right, perfect. I guess we're live. This is the first episode of the Unleash Pod. And I think we said we're going to record the intro later, right?
We are.
Yeah, so let's just give a brief intro in a way on what are we going to do here. So each episode we'll bring up a domain name and we'll try and brainstorm and figure out what could be done with that domain name. Basically, what kind of businesses can one start? And it's basically just a brainstorm podcast, I guess. So for this first episode, I'm bringing one of my domains that I purchased, I guess, first time I purchased it around a year ago. The domain name is called ContentJoy.io. So where did I get this idea? So last year, I discovered a person called Brett, and he's running a business called ContentJoy, hence the name. So what Brett does is he offers a design subscription service. So basically you pay a flat monthly fee, $5,000. At least that's where it is right now. It was probably lower when he started. And you get unlimited design work, right? So you add your requests to a queue, and then he's working on the queue. When the work gets done, he sends it to you and then starts working on the next request, right? He's done, and I've checked his Twitter yesterday, I guess, and he posted that he's done $600,000 this year, so year to date, right? And to make everything even more interesting is he claims he's a one person agency, right? He's doing all of this by himself. I'm not saying he isn't. I'm not saying anything around that, but it's impressive, right? For a single man agency to be making that much money and offering unlimited designs. Anyway, so that's how I came up with the ContentJoy. Okay, what can you do around that? Well, let's get ContentJoy. So I got ContentJoy.io. And my idea here was that instead of offering a design subscription service, what if you could offer a content subscription service, right? So you would have either startups or other companies come to you and say, hey, we will sign up for this. We want you to produce blog posts. We want you to produce tutorials. We want you to produce, video recordings, workshops, et cetera, right? It sounded like a great idea, and that's how I typically am with the domain names. I go and I have an idea, I purchase the domain name and then hold on to it, and then a day later I'm like, nah, I don't know, it's too hard. It's too much work to be done.
It takes effort. No.
Yeah, it does, and I'm always like, I don't mind. It feels like at least on Twitter, right? There's always I see two school of thoughts, I guess. One is, I'll focus on one business, get it built, pour all your time, money, whatever into that one thing and make it work. And then on the other hand, you have the second camp that's saying, no, try 100 different ideas, right? And maybe one or two or three or five will stick, and then go with that. Meaning, if you have 10 of them, you're probably not spending that much time on each one of them because you can't, right? So I don't know where I was going with this, but basically,
it's a good segue, right? Because you're kind of going, okay, ContentJoy was very focused very much on one thing, right? Design. Now your idea is very much, let's do a whole bunch of things initially, right? My concern with this is obviously not trying to discourage here, just trying to understand, how do you make sure that you're an expert in the whole, anything people throw at you?
Yes, right? Yes. Yeah. So that was my, I did think through it a little bit. And I got to that point, like, okay, that's good. Let's say again, I was focusing on tech, right? Primarily, right? I wasn't focusing on botany or gardening or something, right? But theoretically, you could do that as well, right? But it was tech. And I was like, okay, well, if someone comes to me and says, we want you to write a blog post about, let's say, Java, right? Something I have no clue about, I don't know about, right? I'm not an expert on that. What am I going to do, right? It's either I'm going to spend time investigating it, right, and writing about it, or I'm going to like hire an expert, right, and then have them do it. But then the third thing that I was thinking about is, well, who would come to me and say, write something about Java, right? They will come to me and say, hey, write about our product, right? Typically, I mean, if I'm a startup working on a product, right, I want to outsource content creation, I want them to write about my product, not about some generic general thing. So it almost felt like I don't think this is going to work because there's no way you can deliver something 3 days, 4 days, right, or a week turnaround time, because you have to get up to speed with that tech, which you're not an expert on it. You can't be. They just released the freaking product, right? How can you be an expert in it? So I think from there, I was more of a, okay, well, maybe this is not going to work, but how about we offer, like, we're going to engage with you and then we'll create like a full workshop for you. It's not going to be unlimited design, right? It's going to be more of a, you hire us and we create like a full functioning course / workshop, whatever it is, instead of blog posts, right, every week or something. But maybe after that, you turn it into something like that.
Yeah. So there's an interesting company called HubSpot. You must have heard of them before.
Yes.
They do content, inbound marketing, right? And a big part of the strategy is creating content. The reason I'm bringing them up is weird, right? Because I used to be a quote chief marketing officer for a startup, end quote. And the biggest problem wasn't really writing. I can write. It was figuring out a good agenda, outline, plan, schedule, anything like that, right? It's basically, here's my set of domain or products or technologies that I use and that I need. What do I go, like, where do I go from here? What do I do in terms of the actual technology? So I wonder if there is an easy way to scale this, to say, okay, let's not focus on the actual content creation. We can assume maybe that there are writers. Let's see if we can focus on helping those people create a schedule for them to follow, if you will.
Yeah. So basically, your premise is that the companies already have content, more or less. Have their own experts, right? They're in their products, but what they would need or might need help with is scheduling everything, right? And then maybe like another idea that I always not idea, I guess, a concept I try to follow is whenever you have a longer form content, right? Like you spend time, you write a blog post. I always try to like reuse that content, but not in a sense of, let me just copy paste everything and just repost the same thing over and over, like across multiple places. But most in terms of, I have a blog post, well, let me record a video out of it as well, right? And then let me extract or create 10 tweets out of it. I don't know TikTok, how popular TikTok is for tech content, right? But the process of, I have this piece of content, how do I, like, what can I do with it, right? Because initial writing of the content is expensive, I think, right? Like it takes time, you have to research stuff, right? But then you don't want to go back and do that expensive thing over and over again. If you could take what you already produced, slice it and dice it up somehow, and then repurpose that content for different, on different platforms, right?
Interesting. So you're saying, okay, is there something that takes an existing piece of content and repurposes it, basically helps you refine the joy of that content, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Right. It would be. Yeah. What would be the, like, how can, I mean, I'm pretty sure like companies are doing this today, right? They're not like, there's no, like, you can't have people coming up with new content ideas every week and writing new content. I mean, you're going to end up, you're not going to have anything to write about anymore, if you're focusing on your product. That's what I'm saying, right? It's a finite set of content. It's a finite set of things that you can write about and create, right? Unless you're going to go and combine them with different things, but then you can debate how valuable those things are. So how do you spend time creating a good piece of initial content and then figure out how can I parcel that and slice and dice it and have it, reuse it in different on different platforms, right?
So I wonder if there's an in-between where you go, all right, I'm going to write about technology X, right, or product X, and here are the 5 bullet points for this. And then the service basically gives you, all right, here's a suggested schedule for the next 2 months, like write about these 5 key topics that are somehow related to either the product, the domain, something, right? This is the outline of the posts that you should think about. Like, these are the key points that you need to make. This is the overall story. And then, basically generates for each of those posts or points, it generates these accompanying material for, all right, you're going to do a Twitter post here. You're going to do a YouTube video there. Here's the script for this. Here's the this. Here's the that, right? Again, trying to find that, joy.
Yeah, but that would be, I guess with AI, you could theoretically, if you're already starting with some content that you have or company has, right? You could feed it into a language model or something. It says, hey, here's all the content, here's all the knowledge, all the context that we have. What are some of the, what are our gaps? What are we missing, right? What could we write about next? But then you could also take it a step further, right? I mean, even like if you go to ChatGPT now and say, hey, here's my article, you paste it in, and you say, create me 10 tweets out of it, right? You're going to get 10 tweets in like 20 seconds, right? So there's, we can debate how good those tweets are, but you don't have to automatically publish them, right? You can say, hey, here's like 10 tweet ideas. You go and figure it out and change it if you want. But
I mean, that sounds like a super quick MVP to try.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it would be. I mean, it would be. The only hard part, I think, on my side would be, because granted, I'm not an expert in it, and that's why it would be hard, is figuring out how to pipe in all that, like all of the 100 blog posts that I have, let's say, right? And how do you teach the AI and say, hey, here's the corpus of the knowledge that you have, and then extract some information out of it, right?
Well, but do you really need to? I mean, if you look at something like the current GPT version, what is it? We're at 4, I think. You maybe don't even have to, right? All you could say is potentially, here's the key post that we have. Maybe give it like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 accompanying links and say, hey, these are important context. The site itself or the product, service, whatever, generates the right prompt. Parsing all that already, creating one very, very big, good prompt, giving it context, giving it a persona. You can do an analysis beforehand to say, this is the writing voice, so keep this writing voice. Or you can offer a suggestion of like, okay, here's a whole bunch of them. I don't think you need to train it on a significantly large corpus of text. You could, for MVP purposes, just say, hey, here's the post, here's 2 or 3 that you also need to look at. Give me something out of this.
True. Yeah, true. One thing that I would, yes, it has like ChatGPT, it has a lot of context already, right? It knows a lot of stuff. I don't know what the cutoff date is, but you can assume that it's going to be like very fresh every time you're going to try. Like every time they release a new version, like that cutoff date is not a year ago, it's like a couple of months ago, for the stuff that it's trained on, I guess. It's going to get updated. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But one thing that would be cool is, and I've never had a time to try it, right, is, hey, here's my 100 blog posts. Take it, extract my voice out of it or whatever it is, like how I write, and then use that knowledge to create a new blog post on any other topic, I guess. It doesn't have to be related. It's more of a extract what are those like key things or key portions of the voice,
that phrasings and idioms that you use and all those things.
Yeah. And granted, like I not a good writer, so I wouldn't trade it on myself, but you can find a good examples out there, right? And say, hey, like write all this in a voice of XYZ, whoever that like the person is that you wanted to write it in the voice, right? But the other thing that you brought up was quickly to should be a quick thing to do an MVP around. So Saturday afternoon, I was like, oh, let me see what I can do with, like, let me play with ChatGPT a little bit, but not just through the UI, but try the APIs. And one thing that I discovered is, again, we are like software engineers, right? I know how to write code and all that. So that part is fairly easy to me, right? But the hard part is figuring out the prompts, right? Yeah. And that's where the whole, how do I write a good prompt to get out exactly what I want? So I created like a simple front end web page, whatever, right? Front end with like a simple API that makes a call to ChatGPT. And what you do is you provided a topic that you want to write about. I don't know, puppy treats, whatever. And then you also provided, hey, here's like 3, 4, 5, 7 different keywords, right? That I want you to make sure that they're spread out throughout the article in such a way that it's good for SEO, for example, right? And yeah, I mean, it goes and like takes 20 seconds and you get like a 500 word article, I guess, talking about the topic that you pasted in. So I'm thinking like taking that a step further, and again, not an SEO expert, but you could come up fairly quickly, just run a loop through it and say, hey, create me 100 articles in a markdown format, talking about these topics, focusing on these keywords, right? And you would end up with .markdown files, right? Which means you just publish them. It's like once you have the files, getting that published as a blog is like 15 minutes, right? It's not hard. So that would be another maybe idea. I don't know if it will fall under like ContentJoy. It could theoretically.
It's interesting. I'm almost terrified of that idea just because it's like, generating X many posts, right? In a voice. You can, I've seen some of the things that ChatGPT generates. It is, for all intents and purposes, and I'm probably going to get like skinned alive for this, but it's spicy autocomplete right now, right? It's, it goes through a whole set of things, but I wonder, I don't know. It's an interesting one.
It is. It does worry me as well because I'm like, if I can come up with this in an afternoon, right? You could seriously, it takes 30 seconds, right? Like the UI, I just pasted in the some topic or whatever keywords, click the button, less than 30 seconds, and you get a 500 word article. I'm doing air quotes, right? Because it's not, as you said, it's not necessary. It's a fancy autocomplete, right? But as I said, like run it through a loop of 1,000 things, like
you get
1,000 iterations, get 1,000 different, right? 1,000 different articles, spin up a blog site, create the titles, right? You get all that, right? You get a title, you get the content with the keywords, publish it out there, wait a month or two, see if the Google juice, the SEO kicks in, right? Put some affiliate links to it, and that's it, right? I mean, I'm making it sound very simple, but
no, you have to wonder though. I mean, Google, Microsoft, everybody's gonna start identifying content that was generated by AI at some point, right?
Yeah, they have to. They have
Yeah.
to. Otherwise, it's
Otherwise,
it's
no.
gonna be a pain, right? It's gonna be a pain because, as I said, if I can do that in an afternoon, like someone who has way more time than I do,
Yeah.
like you can cover, like you can do a for loop instead of for loop, and you have like 10
Yeah,
different niches doing like 1,000 articles
Oh
per
yeah, for
and
sure.
publish it.
Easy.
I don't know. It sounds exciting, but it also sounds scary because I don't really want to be reading that content because it's probably not good.
So it kind of it there's I think what I want to say is, right, I'd want us to use this AI thing, quote unquote, again, responsibly, right? So to me, like out of these two ideas, I would probably err more on the side of let's take content and try and see what we can glean from it using AI, right?
Yeah.
So on one side, it's what we talked about. Cool. Let's have a look at the post, the context, maybe some additional stuff, and generate a whole bunch of like accompanying materials. But right, this leads us down to a path that we talked about before, and that is, could we genuinely make this into something that's like used for social good, if you will?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Content comes in different shapes and sizes. So video, text. I would imagine podcasts, right? There's audio. Doesn't have to be video. I wonder if we could use this ContentJoy and AI to basically bring accessibility, right? To make content more accessible. So, for example, if you say, okay, well, I did a video, I recorded this talk of a thing. I know you're a Kubernetes expert, right? So maybe you've recorded a talk about something super awesome coming in there, and you would say, hey, this isn't accessible. Like transcripts are, yeah, they're boring, right? You don't really say. So could we use this to say, here's my content in any format, identify key moments of it, provide like accessible versions of this. It could just be highlights. It could be in a video. It could identify the key moments where like, hey, he's drawing on a whiteboard behind you, and this is the key moment. And then you can produce white papers out of it, or just diagrams or something, whatever makes most sense, right? But going back to using this AI momentum for doing something good.
Oh, that's a good. Yeah, that sounds really good. You're basically saying that you're regardless what the content is, instead of going let's just generate thousands of different variations from this thing, let's figure out how we can use AI to make it better, make it more like accessible. Like I like the idea of like, let's say there's a video, and then if it, like the transcripts are just transcripts, right? It's whatever I'm saying that's gonna like get written down, but there's no necessary context around it, right?
Yeah, you can't tweet a transcript.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but it's also like even if you think about what we're talking about right now, if you would do a transcript, which we're gonna get out of this, right? But it's just gonna be a literal transcript of these were the things that were said.
Yes.
I guess we'll see at the end once we stop recording. Maybe it's more advanced, but it would basically be give me more context about not just who said what. I'm assuming that could be done fairly quickly, right? You could figure out this is person A, this is person B, but also like, he gestures with his hands towards the left or whatever, right? To actually explain the context a little bit more, not just a pure transcript. Oh, that would be interesting, right? And I'm assuming this would be videos, right? Like you have YouTube already.
Yeah.
So it's not just the contents that like I produce or you, right? It's like everyone else's. You could apply it to something else already. You don't have to produce the content necessarily.
In all fairness, I mean, Teams, right? Microsoft Teams sort of launched a very relevant thing for this, and that is it's a meeting summarizer basically. So you record a meeting, it generates a transcript, a normal transcript, full length, everything, but then it feeds it into the model and it creates a reasonable, sensible summary out of it. So it understands what were the topics discussed, if there were action items that were mentioned, stuff like that, right? For meetings, that's great. For like content that you would say, okay, let's, YouTube educational content, for example, all probably that would need to happen is identifying really key moments, key learnings. I say it with such simplicity, right? But things, it sounds like it's possible to glean from it. But
yeah, but it's also like one thing that you would probably, like you said, meetings are fairly not easy, but at least you know what you're extracting out of it, right?
Yeah,
like it's typically, these are the key topics that were discussed. These were the action items, whatever. This is when the next meeting is going to be. Here are the notes, etc. Right? But with any content, if you're like trying to make it generic, like what are those parameters that you're trying to extract, right? Is there even something that you could generically extract from a certain set of videos, right? Like educational content, maybe you could generalize it and say, well, here's what the premise is, here's what here's what it's being explained, here's like maybe the diagram or whatever, or explain the actual diagram that's on the video, maybe, right? Like if someone produces a drawn diagram, like I want that in text, right? Explain to me what that diagram is. I just don't know. And then you have like me watching a cat video or a dog video, right? How do you maybe it's stupid, right? To like try to generalize it like that on all of it, but it seems like meetings are great start in a way because it's fairly right. Oh, we're gonna extract action.
It's fairly structured most of the time, right? Obviously, until you attend some of my meetings, but more or less they're structured.
Yeah. And I think that's what I would like struggle with, like figure out what are the things that you're trying to extract, right?
Yeah. But you say, a video of you watching a funny cat video, for example, right? But if we go to, I don't know, I'm thinking about the subscriptions that I have on YouTube. And some are educational, some are just hilarious, but all of them could be made more accessible, right? So, of course, it'll be different. Like if you're watching a cat video, maybe the funny part is just describing that reaction. Like, hey, this person watching has seen a cat and has reacted incredibly funny, jumping 50 meters into the air or something like that, right? And maybe that's enough to say, all right, for this video, to make it more accessible, or to make it, I don't know, to generate content that is accessible, you can just generate, I don't know, a tweet that describes it this way, or a blog post that describes it that way. It could also be, related to this. If you say, okay, well, if we just focus on IT content to start with, like IT educational content, right? And you say, well, if I record a video of me saying, or of me explaining how Azure works, great. What are other options? If I've already done that work, could this video be made accessible by generating blog posts? Could it be made more accessible by generating key tidbits of information that also go into a tweet? So it's like a whole bunch of things that are super relevant, super useful in the grand scheme of things, and making something more accessible.
One thing that when you were talking about it, one idea that I had is, you can generate tweets, blog posts, but what if, talking about tech stuff, right? What if it generates me a working example code, right? Off the thing that was discussed. I mean, I would be like very, right? Like think about you watch a video. I mean, typically I've published a couple of tech videos, right, in my lifetime, right? And you would typically do like a demo or whatever, but then you would also have, oh, by the way, there's a repo with the sample code. What if I didn't have to do that anymore, right? What if I go through a demo, I show it to you, and then this ContentJoy thing, right, extracts the working source code out of it or something, or generates the example that was actually used in a video, right? I mean, that would be impressive.
Yes, it would be.
That would be really impressive. The other thing, and I'm thinking like now I'm thinking about what else is like a source code like cooking videos, right? Like cooking videos, if you watch a video, they typically have like a screen. Oh, here's the recipe,
hit
right?
pause
and then they
now
put it in
and
the
copy over.
description. Exactly. Right? If you've ever followed it, you've done that, right? Or you like, let me go back and see what it is. Or what if it extracts it out for you, right? Here's the recipe that was extracted out of the video, and no one had to actually write it down. It was just
Follows
that
along,
person talking about, right? It's like, hey, do this many this or that many of that, and then that gets extracted into into an actual like a recipe at the end, right?
I mean, that's an idea all in itself, right? We should check if there's a domain available for it, I think.
Or like cooking videos.
ContentJoy.io.
ContentJoy. I'm pretty sure. Like I'm googling. I'm pretty sure there
For
is.
sure. But yeah, I mean, it sounds reasonable, right? Because you've got a. It's got a. Usually, it has a structure. Again, much like the meetings thing, right? It'll always be.
Yeah. And I think that's the key.
Yeah, could be.
That's the key. Like if you can identify what are some of type of content that can have some structure around, or like some structure can be used to extract some valuable information out of it. I mean, talking about accessibility, I guess that would fall under accessibility in a way, right? Because it is making it like it's serving you content in a different format. Maybe you can watch a video, maybe you can like use audio, whatever it is, right? And you generate the other type of content out of it. But yeah, it seems like tech videos, right? What else? I'm trying, like I'm looking at YouTube and see if I can.
I mean, so let's brief recap, right? Because we've talked about a few ideas now. We're all right. So the first one was generating content, which we've kind of not really dismissed. Neither of us seem to be huge fans of doing that, right? It feels scammy. I don't know.
It feels really bad. I mean, honestly, I would like to run an experiment just to see, like, could this really? I'm pretty sure people are already doing this. I'm not inventing hot water here, right? No. It's not the first one doing this, but yeah, I agree. It feels very scammy. And
so, all right, let's park that idea for a second, right? The second one then was, here's a set of content, focusing on one. Could we create a service feels like an easy MVP to and our secret sauce would be the prompt itself, right? That's where the magic happens. So can we create a service to take your content, kind of parse the relevant things, feed it into this model with the right prompt, and generate you a set of material that you can use to market and reuse your content over and over again for like a distinct period of time, right? Either generating tweets from blog posts, or generating tweets from a video, or generating a blog post from a video, stuff like that, right? Which leads us into this next one, which is accessibility related, and saying, all right, how could we, could there be a service that says, hey, creating, kind of doing a marketing pitch here, but creating your content was hard enough. Now make sure everybody, truly everybody, gets to experience it. If it's a blog post, we'll help you write everything else, or it'll find the key points in a blog post as well, create summaries, things like that. If it's a video, again, finding those things. And that's something that you can make an agency out of, right? You can literally say, we have a subscription service. So I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but you could say we have a subscription service. It costs this much. You have, I don't know, N many videos available or N many content types. You send it over. We run it through a model, and you say, all right, these are my key things that I need to make accessible. And then still a human can verify that, right? I think that's going to be important for a long time still.
Yeah, I don't think there's a fully 100% automated way of, at least not yet.
No. But, so those are kind of the three we have, right, at the moment. Did I get that right? I think it's a fair recap.
Yeah. This is more, I think so. Things though. Yeah, first one's too scammy. Second one feels like a lot of, I don't know. Second one could be viable as well, right?
It feels like a good stepping stone towards the third one, for what it's worth.
Yes. Yeah, true, because you could, yeah, you're right. If you do the second one, the next logical thing could be another
Yeah,
tier,
yeah,
right? Like, oh, first tier we just do this, and then second tier let's take it a step further and provide the accessibility options,
yeah.
right?
And by then
Yeah,
you have
now,
some material, like some body of work that you can base this off of. You could say, all right, well, if we have 100 blog posts and we've identified this much, right? We're back to terms of service and all that, but you can sort of train a model on top of this as well. Maybe not with 100 blog posts, but you get the point, right? Or you can
mhm.
tweak the actual prompt and all those things, right? But it feels like that's why I said it sounds like a good achievable MVP that could lead us down the path of, all right, this is it's a service that makes it better for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like assuming you figure out what is some of the structure
Yeah,
around it that you could extract in terms of like for accessibility purposes, right? Like, oh, do I start with like a blog post? How can you make a blog post more accessible, right? Like, well, you can add like automatic
yeah,
summarization, right, to summarize things. I'm assuming that would be maybe rewrite
yeah,
some portions of it to make it easier to understand, right? Like, imagine like you're browsing, like if I would go and browse or try to read a scientific health
yeah,
journal or article, I would probably have a hard time understanding
yeah.
like what all those things mean, right? And imagine there's a button or something, and I would just say, "Hey, explain
Make it
this."
human.
Yeah,
Yeah,
explain it to me like I'm 10
yeah,
years old, right? What this is, and it would be like an on-demand type of thing. It's not even, oh,
yeah.
I'm gonna feed it through something, right? I think you could do this today theoretically, right? And you could do it today probably in an afternoon.
I wonder if there's a
Probably, and I'll tell you how. I'll tell you how. Like, you Chrome add-in, Chrome
yeah,
plugin, right? Extension, whatever they're called, Chrome extensions. That's fairly easy to
yeah,
set up, right?
yeah.
Track the mouse, where person like, so let's say you do the selection, right? They select a paragraph, pop up a button, you say, explain it like I'm five. And then the only thing that's doing is wrapping that selection that you selected in a engineered
Yeah,
prompt that gets sent to ChatGPT, right? And the prompt could be whatever. Hey, act as an expert in
yeah, yeah,
whatever
yeah.
the try to get a context from the website. Is it health? Whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
And explain this as like if I'm 10 years old.
You know,
Right?
that sounds like a fun project, which is in line with the name itself. I wonder if we can make it even more funner. One more time, and it's like explain it to me like I'm a slider, and then you just go like an A, B, C,
Oh,
D,
yeah.
and
Dumb
yeah,
it down for me. Yeah, yeah,
how
yeah.
far do you want to go to actually make it understandable?
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Or I mean, that's like it's a little bit like humorous, right? But you could actually make it in a way where you say, uh, explain. Let's say it's a scientific health article, whatever article that you're reading, right? And you say, hey, explain this to me. You would basically give it context and say, hey, I'm an
yeah,
engineer. Explain this to me as an engineer who has no clue about like health chemistry, whatever it is, right?
yeah,
Or if you take a different angle, say, hey, I'm a musician, explain this to me in the terms that I would understand. Right?
yes, that's
And that would be content joy. That could be content joy because you could
yes.
make any content a joy to read and or consume. Right?
It's interesting. It kind of goes down into this contextually aware ish model, right? Of like, okay, sure, you have a plugin, but you tell the plugin, I am an engineer, this is my background, I speak English, I am a musician, I am like this, these are my hobbies, I love dogs,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Basically,
yeah, 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 yeah,
you
yeah,
tell
yeah.
it a bit about yourself and it forms the context for what you would understand. Then you go and read something and you say, all right, show me this content in a pleasant, funny, interesting way, right? So it's not about your content being delivered differently. It's
Yes.
looking at other people's content.
It's
and
everybody
making it-
else's content delivered. Yeah, so it's almost like I know like people. There's probably like a pyramid or somewhere drawn about this, but like people learn differently, right? Like some people prefer visual types, audio types,
Yeah,
whatever, whatever those classifications are, right? And it's basically deliver this to me in a way that I prefer to learn about it. You know, it's not. So that's a second angle to it, right? I think one angle would be explain this to me so it's easier for me to understand, right? To grasp, not necessarily I'm a visual type, you know, give me a video of this, but first make it in such a way that I can understand what it is. Yeah. Put it in text. That's the simplest way to do it, right? And then you can take it a step further and say, hey, show me this in a diagram, maybe if I'm a visual type, you know, show me this. How would this be explained in a diagram somehow?
Render a pizza commercial out of it.
Yeah, that's the video.
Yeah.
What was that? I remember seeing
I don't know. It was
but I
some
don't know.
AI generated thing. But,
Yeah, it was AI generated like a Pizza Hut commercial or whatever. Yeah.
but it, you know,
no,
in,
but
in this like accessibility mindset, right? It's still interesting because if you do go and say, all right, I'm going to go to a blog, I want to read this blog in slightly better. There's a whole bunch of, I'll say, different approaches to how we like. If you have ADHD, right? Basically, if you're neurodivergent at any point, maybe you prefer summaries. Maybe you prefer certain words getting highlighted. There's very small things that you can do that make a huge difference and a huge impact on how well you read that information, right? Even if you just focus on the blog posts. And as funny as it sounds, like, hey, dumb it down to like I'm 10, right? If you do say, hey, rewrite this or show me the information that I would need or that I would understand best as this type of person, there's, I think, huge potential in that, honestly. The thing that's interesting is it shifts the. This is going to sound horrible. I hate myself for even thinking about it, but there's no monetization strategy because you can't really charge the content creator, and you don't want to charge the user for this, right? You don't want to say, hey, if you want to make your experience better, pay up, right? But
yeah, well, yeah, true. You can make it I mean, let's get it straight. It doesn't feel as scammy as that first.
Oh yeah, no,
yeah, for sure,
yeah.
right? That's extremely, you know, but yeah, it would sound like it's something that a lot of people would benefit out of it, right? But if you wouldn't feel comfortable charging end users for it, you could always offer this as a service to companies, right? And have them turn these. So instead of going with we're going to give you a Chrome plugin or Chrome extension that everywhere you can download and it's going to work for you, that same logic, idea, or algorithm, whatever it is, you sell that or monetize that to like New York Times, right? I don't know. Some company that provides a lot of content.
I had a thought. It has come to me. So you're sort of you hit the nail on the head, right? You create a service. So here's the other thing. I'm sure if you're anything like me, you have a ton of bookmarks, a ton of content that you've saved for later that you almost never revisit, right?
Yep.
You can see where I'm going with this, right?
It's like the list of domain names.
Exactly, right? There's a reason. So what if, right? You could say, all right, yes, there's a plugin. We start with that. It makes sense. But what it does in the back is it generates a nice summary and stores it somewhere, right? Like all of those like Headspace and Headway, and I don't know how many apps you have where they take books, or Blinkist. You take books and they create a summary, and then you can always revisit the summary with like key learning points, right? Same thing. You have a list of content that you read and consumed, and then there's a whole bunch of like points out of that content that help you kind of, okay, I need to remember the content, right? I need to go there. These are the key points of this great blog post that I've read. And then there's the source, right? So you can always go back to the original post. So you're not really robbing anybody from their content. You're not taking anything away. You're not scammy, right? You're genuinely saying, all right, we're gonna have a way to rewrite this in a way that's understandable to anybody. So if it's a complex engineering thing written in a complicated voice, scale it back down to something that I can understand, but then also store the key points, the key learnings out of this in the service on ContentJoy.io, where I would have all of those available. This is what I've learned. And then you can do more, right? You can say, all right, well, these are the common themes that you're interested about. Common topics, common blah, 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 common grouping this, grouping there, source material from here, and so on, right?
So it would be, give me an example, like a scenario. I go to a website and what happens?
So let's say you go to my blog, right? Insert plug for blog, right? Or something like that. And you say, okay, well, you have this plugin installed, the Google extension, and you see one of the articles. You say, all right, I want to understand this. It's a .NET article. I have a bunch of stuff focusing on Azure. Maybe there's a way to say use it in terms. Use like Kubernetes terms to explain this to me. So it would rewrite that, generate the key, I guess, summary, a couple bullet points. That's all there is, right? And then store this information along with the link in ContentJoy. So when you go back to ContentJoy.io, what you would see is here's a list of the content that I've consumed recently that I found interesting. These are the key summaries out of them, and then you can always revisit, right? And sometimes remember the summaries are really trigger. So they're a really good trigger for your memory. So if you see just like 3 highlights from a blog post, you'll recall a lot more of that blog post.
The whole,
right?
Yeah. Oh, so it's almost like it's almost like you're building your own, I guess, like a content system or.
But for you,
okay,
right?
Okay,
it's
okay.
just for you.
Yeah. Personal. Yeah. So it's like, what was that app or service called? Pocket.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Is
it's Pocket. Yeah.
Right. Pocket is like, I don't know if it's for RSS, like feed.
Yeah, or links.
Or like whatever, right? You basically click and it just transfers. So you're basically saying something like that with the additional value of like summarizing it.
Yeah.
And storing it with the summary.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you could easily monetize that then.
Yes.
Right? You could say, like you can store 20 links for free or whatever, and then anything about whatever it is. But how is that less scammy than just summarizing and charging people for it?
Well,
right.
fair.
Right. You're just true. It's you could like turn it around and say, oh yeah, because it's stolen.
Well, yeah, it's more like here's your notebook, if you will, of things that you've learned, right? You still offer that basic. We can summarize it for you for essentially free, right? But then if you want anything else, here's a little bit of extra that you pay for, and that's how we fund the whole service, right? You say you're going to keep your thing here, and like I said, you can add a whole bunch of stuff on top after. You can find related relevant content. You can start group. There's there are a bunch.
Yeah, you could basically like Netflix, right? Watch this next.
Yes,
right. You could, based on the content, you could say, hey, if you're interested in this, you're probably going to be interested in that as well, based on. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. I mean, honestly, I was more fired up for the whole. Oh, let me just select here and then change, like explain it. But this would be an interesting component because this is something that you could charge for and say, hey, I want to clip this and store it right somewhere so I can go back to it. And then go back to it and store it. That feels like it's a solved problem, like technically, right? It's it's not gonna say it's easy, right? But it's solved. The hardest part here would be figuring out what the proper prompt would be to like, hey, explain this to me like blank, right? Or
in a way that I
would
understand.
This and that, right? Yes, so it feels like there's 2 components. One component is understanding who the user is, like how do you capture that, right? What do you? I'm a whatever, a 30-year-old male, blah, 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 living here, living there. Do you go with that, or do you go more with a, here are the scientific, as I said, those scientific, like, I like to learn visually. I like to learn,
Yeah.
I don't know what that's called. I'd have to Google it, right? But have some like structured way of explaining, telling to the service, hey, this is how I prefer to learn, right?
Well, the best way of doing that, right, is to give it examples already. So to say, these are the 5 blog posts that I really enjoyed, or the 5 videos that I really enjoyed. So you can start with already saying, hey, let's build your profile by saving some of the things that you really enjoy learning about. Either it's books or it's this, and then you can sort of index on, all right, well, like I the most books I've read now recently have been in summary form, because they're super easy to consume when I'm walking my dog, right? Who would have thought?
Yeah.
So I would say, all right, well, I learn best in summary form and audio. But it can also be gleaned out of this. Glean is probably the word for today.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm thinking of now I'm blanking. There's an example that I mean, Twitter does this theoretically, right? When you sign up for a new account, it's going to ask you, hey, here's like follow 5 people or whatever, just to get started, right? And then they use that as a seed for, suggesting you. Oh, logo design, right? Some of the logo like design services or websites will actually show you, hey, here's like 50 examples of different logos. Which styles do you prefer? So something like that, but it would be with, like, what are your favorite ways or preferable ways to consume content? And then what are some of the examples of the content that you like?
Yeah.
Be it either, and we can extract that, like what that likeness means, right? It could be, we could figure out if that's because it's summarized, because it's that specific author, or, or a voice of it, whatever. Oh, okay, that would be interesting, right? So you would tell it. The only thing that sounds hard about that is figuring out, like, extracting what are those like characteristics out of the content that you provide, right? Because if it's a free entry form, well, let me just paste in like 5 different books that I enjoy or 5 different authors. How do we on the back end, like on the back end, you have to have something that, something smart, either you, but that would be awesome later on. Like, let's say you get like 5,000 users or 10,000 users or whatever it is, right? You can already draw some like common things out of it, and then maybe start building up. Like, hey, we know what are the characteristics of people who consume this type of content, because we could figure that out. Right?
That is a selling point, that you go back to publishers, to content providers, and you say, hey, we've run, like, there's analytics on, I don't know, 100, 1,000, or X many people that have stored your content. We've discovered that they react best to this type of voice.
So you're basically selling them the secret sauce.
Well, you're going back,
assuming they don't know what the secret sauce is.
Well,
right?
Well, if you don't, so there's a whole bunch of tweets, right? For whatever reason, this is popular on my timeline right now. There's a YouTuber called Mr. Beast, and he follows a very specific pattern to all of his videos. So I assume he's figured out, like, this is the way to get the best reach. But if you're, I don't know, New York Times or whatever, clearly let's not take them as an example. But if you are a content publishing house, right, and you do have a wide variety of articles and a wide variety of voices and so on, if there is a pattern to saying, hey, your users prefer content that is written this way, or prefer content that has these types of references or these types of visual aids or something, hey, they can learn from that, right? They could say, all right, well, we're going to index slightly on that, and we're going to make sure that some of our texts follow this, and then they can do A/B testing if they want.
So it's extracting the secret sauce in a way, right? But secret sauce that will work for you, like tailored to you, because you can't, I could go and look at what Mr. Beast is doing and try to figure out how to edit videos like he's editing them, or try to figure out what that secret sauce is, but that's not going to work for me.
Yeah, that's,
you know what I mean? Like maybe there are some generic things that you can apply that work across the board, but I would rather give this service my content, like the blog posts that I produce, the videos that I've created, and they would go and say, oh, okay, so based on the likes, views, some metrics, right? This type of content performs best because of these 5 things.
And
right?
it's an additional.
And once I know those 5 things, I can go and create content with those things in mind. Okay, so that's like that's secret sauce joy.io.
And
or
it's an additional monetization strategy, right? If you think about it, if you have your funnel basically going, all right, I'm a user. I go to an article. I try and translate it in a way that it's understandable to me. I store it, and maybe that, so that storage is option number 1 of how you monetize. You say, all right, well, for users, for consumers, I want to do this. But then all that storage and all of those articles are enabling you to add some analytics on top. And you can say, hey, a lot of people are looking at this article and using a very similar way of reframing it, or they're using a similar, they're reacting on a specific summary or something and storing it. And selling that to the content providers themselves.
So you're basically saying let's take New York Times, whatever it is, right? Some big content provider. Let's say we notice that 80% of people who summarize articles on New York Times, right? They summarize it in this specific way, right? Or whatever. Simplify, explain it like I'm 5, whatever the category is, right? Yeah, and if you gather enough people, if you have enough users, that becomes more relevant, and then you can go back to the actual producer of that content and say, hey, we have these additional analytics that we can give you that will help you make your content more accessible, right? Or whatever it is, right? Make your content better. That sounds like it's a 2. Right?
Yeah, 2 for 1.
Can make money from 2 sides, right? It's not just
you're not selling a person as well, right? It's not like
no. I mean, it's not going to be personally identifiable information anyways. Like, hey, these are, I mean, in a way you are like selling people's preferences, right? If like, I'm thinking back on Facebook, right? Like, what people like the stuff that people liked, and then they turn around and sell that and use it as part of their advertisers, right? Like, I can go in as an advertiser and say, I want to target people who like these 18 things or whatever.
I think there's a line, there's a fine line that you shouldn't cross of selling demographics is always interesting, especially to advertisers. When you have a corpus of data, it's going to be that much more interesting. But if you make it about trends in ways of writing, ways of providing it, you can avoid being scammy. You can avoid being Facebook, right? Basically. And I don't know. It feels like...
I mean, the thing is there, I guess now, if I think about it, there's 2 ways that you could monetize this on the back end. And when I'm saying on the back end is monetizing it to companies, right? Content providers. Let's call them content providers, right? One, it's we give you analytics to make your content better, i.e. you're going to reach more people, right? But then on the other hand, if they do that, then we're losing our business in a way, right? If they make their content better, people are not going to use our... So, but then let's leave that aside. And then the second thing is we sell them information or give them ability to advertise, right? Because how would content providers use the information that they get for advertising? They wouldn't, right? We could do that and say, hey, you can advertise on our Chrome plugin or whatever it is, and we can target people with these characteristics.
Yeah.
That would be different, right? I don't think they can, well, maybe they can figure out a way to monetize that somehow, right? But I don't think they can use it for advertising per se, right? right? Like we would have to be the ones offering that ad thing, right? Like, hey, pay us. We can get your message to
This type of
right these types of people, or these people with these characteristics, right? So I think it's.
I mean, the second. Sorry, don't want to interrupt your flow. It just you can still sell them the service as well, right? You can say you have an article, let's say a complicated financial analysis article. Why don't you want, like, you can just have a little bit of a button right next to it that says summarize this, and you can drop down and say, summarize it for a software engineer, or vice versa, right? And it already flips the article on their website. So it's like it's a service that they provide at that point. So you would sell this to a New York Times. Or
true, yeah. You could do it, yeah. So that would be like a third way to monetize it. I can see it, right? Because you don't have to sell that ability to them, right? Necessarily, you could say, "Hey, this is with us." However, you could theoretically say, "No. We give you an API that you include in your Next.js app or whatever it is, the website." Call back to us and we'll summarize it for you, right? It's a service that you can have.
And you get the Facebook like button, basically, right? The copy of that one. So you can say, include this and we'll do the rest.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But that would be something that you would do later on, I guess. You can't start with that because that would mean me going to, New York Times and saying, hey, include this thing in your stuff. They're going to say no, right? They're going to laugh me out of the room, right? However, if I if I create a Chrome plugin or extension, it's just their website, right? I can still summarize it, right?
It, again, going back to this, how do you make this idea a reality, right? So if we go, all right, well, the MVP is simple. It's a Chrome extension that summarizes a website in a voice of a 10-year-old or in the voice of a engineer, software developer, financial analyst, whatever, right? On that note, I mean, that's a really big thing, by the way, for me, right? If I look at like really complicated articles on investing or something, I would love to see those be translated, quote unquote, into software speak, right? I'm sure there's
or just give me an example, right? Give me an example of what, like, give me this. For me, it's always like, give me something. How does this look like in practice, right? I can read scientific literature all day long, right? But if I don't have a concrete example of something, I'm not gonna know. Like, so it's harder for me.
Super easy MVP to get started, I think. And then the next step is there's a service on the back. That's like, all right, now we're going to store your things. And then you go from there, you build the analytics.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, even with, like, as a first step, like an MVP, well, not even, let's say, not even like a proof of concept that I would do is just create a Chrome extension, hook it up to ChatGPT, right? What else? Why would I go and train the model, right? It doesn't make sense. It's good enough, assuming. Give the users the ability to say, like, transcribe or translate or give me this in my language or the terms that I understand. However, on the back end, you can already start collecting information, right? Like, theoretically, to save on cost, right? Is like, if I go to a certain article and I say summarize for a financial person or whatever, summarize this article in the voice of a financier or whatever it is, and you do the same, I don't want to, like, call ChatGPT again for you, right? I'll just serve you whatever we've already created. So that's like, you're saving a little bit of money there with the with the open API costs, right? So you don't have to do this all the time. Meaning, it's also gets faster, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like initial thing is going to take 30 seconds, but any subsequent is going to be less than a second because you can just serve it up, right? So you have that. You wouldn't even monetize it at the beginning, right? Just gather people's emails, right? That's how I would do it. Like, have them sign up, store the contents that they requested, not necessarily under their name. We don't need that, right? And then once, assuming you get some users, right, you try a paid feature. Like, you said, store this in a, hey, we created this website. You can go there, you can log in, you have all these things that you've summarized, you have it there.
Yeah.
Right? That would be in dollars per month or whatever it is, or lifetime subscription, whatever you want to call it. Right? So it's almost like you have to get traction with it in order for those later monetization ideas to make sense.
I mean,
you can't go, right? You can't.
This
can't go to companies and sell them something, right?
I just want to build this. This sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's the problem that we get into.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it sounds so great, but then tomorrow it's not going to sound great anymore. Or you're going to think about 5 different things.
The question is, will we have the time to build? But yeah, I mean, this is...
Yeah, but in an afternoon, I'll bet you $1 in an afternoon you can build a proof of concept for this. Sign up for the newsletter, right? Collect email, whatever it is, right? I mean, you need a way to collect emails, or at least a way to know that people are interested in it, and then a way for it to call. Simple database, store a URL, store the type, the voice, right? You want the article in, and then just the contents, right? Or some key things. Basically, you don't have to call the ChatGPT again, right? To get the information back. Yep. And that's pretty much all you need. Like, it's not. It does sound like an afternoon work. It's not even, for a proof of concept, of course.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what you need, right? You start with that. You see how many users you get. You see if you can build it, right? If you.
Well, I thought you started with stickers first. You create stickers, right? Otherwise, it's not a real product if you don't have stickers.
And a T-shirt at some point. Yeah. No, this is true. But I mean, in terms of like, you can set some success measures on this. It's fairly easy, right? You can say, hey, if I get you launch this on like Product Hunt and a whole bunch of like Reddit, right? I would imagine.
Yeah.
And you see if your user base grows, and it's nice because it's not you who actually has to do the scaling.
The only thing, like, now that you mentioned Product Hunt, is if you're gonna, I mean, of course you have to release it somewhere, launch it somewhere there in order to get some traction. It's not they'll find you and you're gonna succeed. That never happens.
You build it, they will come. It's not real.
But if you're gonna launch it like that, if you're gonna do like a Product Hunt launch, I would want a paid option to be available right away.
Do you think?
You know what I mean? Because otherwise, like, people are going to sign up, they're going to try it, and that's it, right? But the real proof is going to be how many people will give you their credit card information. And I think the simplest way you could do that is you could say, hey, you can summarize 3 things per day, whatever that number is, right? If you want to have like 10 or unlimited, whatever, like, create some like pricing tier, something like, oh, we're going to charge you $5 per month. I think that's maybe too little, but let's say $5, whatever the amount is, something per month, and you have 10 queries per day or 20 queries per day. It
depends on the OpenAI pricing model, right? I don't remember what it is, but usually the AI features tend to cost about $4.99 a month. For what I've seen.
AI stuff, I mean, ChatGPT is $20 per month, right? If you pay like but that's like an online version. Not online version. The non-API version. That's what I'm trying to say. The API version is like priced separately.
No, you have to look at it. I mean, so I'm a huge proponent of Notion. Huge fan. Notion charges something for it, $4.99, I think. But if you think about why,
for their AI,
right? But what it does under the hood is so ChatGPT, if you're gonna log on, you have that subscription, you're gonna use it every day. It's unlikely that you won't, right? You're just gonna have it open somewhere and just go blast at it. Whereas if you're using it in something like a Notion or I don't know, even Microsoft's Copilot, you're gonna do one request in a while, right? So you can spread that cost a lot easier. And $4.99 is much more accessible than 20 or.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I wasn't saying pay $20 for it. No. But if you, again, I would have to, like, just to give you an example for my afternoon of like playing with this, the stuff that I was playing with, I spent like 5 cents.
Yeah, that's not too expensive.
Right. right? And that's like for me, afternoon developing, you know, like I don't know how many requests, but it's not, yeah,
Okay. I mean that's not
it's not
horrible.
that bad. I mean, famous last words,
Yeah.
right? It's not that
Yeah.
bad. And then someone like runs a bot that
Summarizes the internet.
you would definitely have to rate limit it,
yeah,
you
for
know,
sure.
like
Yeah.
you're going to get rate limited with the open API as well, right? So you would have to figure out how how to get around that, not around that, but how to make sure that, it's not, they have, what is requests per minute, 3,500 requests per minute, which is, that's substantial for, for a proof of concept, right? It's not that bad.
No, but I mean, you know, it feels fairly logical. Right? You can start with a tier where you say, hey, you can summarize, you can do a free tier, like you said, summarize 3 articles a day, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You can do like a mid tier where you can summarize, I don't know, let's say 100 a month, whatever. That's not
some limit.
Yeah. But you can also pick the voice, right? You can start like adjusting your preferences of how you want it to be summarized. And then there's like the normal tier of saying, all right, well, not only that, but now you have unlimited. Like you can.
Okay. So first tier, free, you get N queries per day or whatever. Second tier would be
slightly more than
N per month, right? Slightly more than N, but you also have the ability to pick from these 5 predefined voices. And then tier 3, I'm thinking is, or maybe tier 4, or call us, you know, when they have like their pricing, it's like call us for pricing, would be, we can summarize this in a voice extracted from your content.
That's
right?
a call.
Like that would be like, just put it there. That's like thousands and thousands of dollars. Like companies would do that. No,
but you train the model on a corpus of text. You say, hey, this is these are all the articles we've ever written.
Would have to figure it out. Yes, we would have to figure it out. But yeah, that would be the idea. It's like, hey, we're gonna come in. You're gonna send us all the content that you have, or point us to all the content. We're gonna extract the voice, and then you'll have that option as a voice for your, and that would probably be bundled with the whole. We offer this on our website. You know, like New York Times offers it as a website in a voice of something that was trained on something or whatever, right? I guess we'll have to rethink it, but yeah. So it's $0.002.
That's expensive
for 1,000 tokens.
Okay, yeah, that's
so that's not too like. No. Let's say, and 1,000 tokens. I think there's a way to calculate this. It's not necessarily 1,000 words, right? But let's say roughly think about it as 1,000 words, and assuming 1,000 words is a query, that's not too bad, right? Like $0.002 per query.
It's not too horrible, no.
That's great, right? That's like, that's like $2 per $1,000 queries.
Yeah, let me do the math. So I just had a thing. I wrote something. I had 6,000 and a bit words. And that was 13 pages, give or take. So realistically, right? Yeah, it's
well, but this would be the. I think. Well, let me see. I think this is the amount of tokens that you sent to the Open API. I don't know if that's the amount of tokens you get back, and you get charged for it as well. You know what I mean? I think you get charged for what you send in, not what the. I think, I don't know, but anyway, right? And that's GPT 3.5 Turbo. That's the name of the model. Right? GPT 4 is substantially more expensive, right? It's like 3 cents per 1,000 tokens.
But I don't think we need it by then or that much, right?
Oh, so 1,000 tokens is about 750 words, right?
Okay.
Right, so that would be. Oh, actually, no, you're right. So this would be prompt plus what are you trying to summarize, right? So yeah, that would be something that would have to like think about. Does it make sense? Like, how do you figure out the whole article?
Well,
what is the whole article like HTML wise, right? How do you extract the whole article? That's what I say might be easier if you just do select this paragraph.
And then, browsers already do this, right? If you go into reading mode, They already know where the content, like what the content is. So leaning on the accessibility
right,
side, you can almost always get the content. So the pricing for GPT-4, right? It says prompt and completion. So the good thing about this is completion is substantially more expensive. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But if you say, all right, well, here's it costs us 6 cents for 1,000 tokens, but the output, the completion itself, is going to be much smaller because it is in fact a summary.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think we're going to get I think it's going to take a while to get back to those 1,000, right? If you will.
Well, yeah, but the easiest way is just to see if it works. Right? Set a limit on the API, and I don't want to spend more than $1,000 on let me know when I'm getting close to $1,000 used on an API key, and then you figure it out from there, right? Let's say you get to that level, you're spending. So if you're spending, let's say $1,000, and I don't know if that's a lot or not, right? I really don't. $1,000 per month on an open API, right? How many users would you have to have in order to justify, to at least break even?
Well, I mean, right? This is the age-old question. You would need 1,000 users that would each pay $1, right? Or and so on and so on and so on.
True. Yeah. True.
It's one of the classic ones. If I build a toothbrush for $1 and sell it to all 6 billion people.
Yeah. So you would basically, so $5 per month, you would need 200 people paying to justify that. But then again, I don't know if those,
this is
200. I don't know if those 200 people would generate enough requests to warrant $1,000 bill, right? That's honestly, I wouldn't worry about that right now.
No, I would start with
if I was building this.
See where it gets, see where we get to, right? See what the first reactions are. Is there some growth? Do people want to pay for the first tier and so on? And then you can say, yeah, we gave it a go, or it doesn't seem like it works, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's you would have to focus on the part that's the hardest for me, which is marketing this. Because there's no other way to get users. You would have to, push it a product hunt, probably Hacker News, see if it takes on. Everything else should be fairly straightforward. I mean, Stripe payment link. That's all you need. Yeah. Stripe payment link for $4.99 per month subscription. Subscribe here. You're gonna get these many things, and that's it. Right?
Yeah.
We make it sound so easy.
I mean, if you want it to sound easy, just call us.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're past an hour.
We are.
Let's call it done for episode 1.
Yeah, this was fun. So, all right, now the actual work starts. Right now, we have to go and build this. Clearly.
Yeah, exactly. We can build it, or someone else can pick this up and build it for us. I guess that's the other option. All right, Anze, nice talking to you.
Likewise. Have a good rest.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks, I guess. Episode 2.
See you soon.
Hopefully. All right, bye.
Toodaloo.